So you come back from Italy?
Yeah, come back from Italy.
Where'd you head to
next? That was
next?
great. And then I think we're on the build up to Herrick 4 then, the big one. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're going into 2006 then.
2006.
Yeah.
So Herrick 4, that's Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Is mindset different? Because obviously it's not Iraq.
Well, we didn't expect anything big, to be honest, because it was billed as like a hearts and minds thing. You know, I think the Defence Secretary at the time, John Reid, said that he'd be happy if we'd not fire a single shot and come back. And that's what he predicted. But it really wasn't like that.
Okay.
You know, because I felt that we'd missed the big war in Iraq, that we wouldn't get to test ourselves, you know. We just didn't think it would ever come. And Herrick 4 just seemed to be an extension on from the Operation Enduring Freedom that started in 2001 with the Americans, and we just didn't think anything would happen. We thought we'd just go there and it'd just be peacekeeping operations and nothing would really happen, but obviously.
And where was you starting out in Afghan?
We went pretty much everywhere from Battalion.
Okay.
Like, because it wasn't like it was later on. We had like one battalion controlling most of Helmand province.
Right.
Which would later be held by brigades and stuff, you know, way bigger outfits. But for us, we were just one platoon dropped in a platoon house and then, you know, fighting like fuck as the tour went on.
Okay.
Because we didn't understand at the time about the harvesting season and them going out getting the poppies and everything, and there being a lull then and then kicking off for the summer fighting season and stuff. We didn't understand any of that then, you know, there's not the knowledge. And that was the first time they were really having a resurgence of Taliban. Because up to that stage, there hadn't been much, but they started to re-infiltrate into areas and take over small checkpoints held by ANA and AMP.
Which is the Afghan National Army.
Well, the Northern Alliance as they were.
Oh, really?
Immediately after.
Okay.
And then they started to become the ANA.
Yeah.
And the ANA you could trust more than the AMP.
And the P, the police.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were they were just as bad as the Taliban.
Yeah.
AMP.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was it. That was Herrick 4.
And you'd gone out there as a sniper? Was that your main role?
Yes, I went out there as a sniper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely in Lance Jacket this time?
Lance Jack, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, getting ready for selection. I had my interview in Goresk. I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I was going to get on a Winter 07, I think. I was down for selection and I was really...
Special Forces selection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was looking forward to that.
Okay.
I would say Goresk was quite quiet while we were there, because that was the initial big place we went to. But then that was more because of the poppy season. And seeing the Americans there as well. There's an American Special Forces group there in Goresk, in the FOB. But they go out on patrol, dragging a massive US flag behind their vehicle. And we were like,
hey,
what the fuck? Definitely not hearts and minds, this.
No.
And they just go somewhere, stir up a load of shit, and then we'd have to deal with it after, basically. Yeah. And I think the TASS were there as well. And they were just... Their sergeant major, I think he was X2 Para, was like, I'm not letting them out because they're all shit. So they just basically got drunk every night.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with these special forces, did you get to chat to any of them and get ideas or?
No, they were
like
just, we just didn't like it. We kind of looked down on them really.
Okay.
Because they were TA. They were like quite arrogant. Like, we'd take photos, take an alley fots and that, like you do in theatre, and they'd come back and say, oh, you've got to delete that because I'm in the background. Fuck off, you dog. I'll do what I want. And then I remember we had like a sniper tower in the middle of Goresk. And I'd be out there with the 338 and I'd basically do a 360 sketch. That's what I spent most of my time doing, whilst observing and everything. And I remember they would shoot from inside camp and they'd shoot from the sniper tower. And I remember one of them coming up there and he had an L96 and he was like, he was going to shoot and he was like, yeah, mate, this is quite loud, so you might want to cover your ears. I was like, really? And I sat there with a 338, like as if I don't fucking know. Do you know what I mean? And I just thought, bell end. Yeah, we didn't like them much.
Okay.
And the Americans were just way too gung-ho. And they just like, you'd have an AO and then there'd be a massive firefight and it'd be like, what's what's happening? And it'd be the Americans, because they don't tell anyone. I don't think they even tell their own side. Like, their SF are not even part of their army, so they'll operate without anyone knowing where they are,
right.
including friendlies, which could cause massive issues.
Yeah. Is that their Delta force or?
I think so.
Yeah.
ODA or something it was.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because they've got a lot of different sections, haven't they? For
yeah, but they
SF
spend like years out of theatre. They spent so long. Like their
Yeah.
tours are crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember in Garesh there was a monkey. He used to go around stealing everyone's kit. He used to grab people's kit and fuck off. This fucking monkey, yeah.
An actual monkey?
An actual monkey.
Okay. Weird.
Weird. It is weird, isn't it?
So nothing too much happened in Garesh?
Not really. We had our first tiny little contact, and all it was just like a burst of fire from a building somewhere, which we responded to with everything we fucking had.
Okay.
Because the thing is, coming back off Northern Ireland, like nothing really happened. Like if there was anyone had to fire a shot in Northern Ireland, it'd be the talk of the battalion for like 2 years, because nothing ever happened. Nothing kinetic. And so this was like the first thing that ever really happened to us. It was just one burst of fire, and it was like, wow, we were in contact. Not realizing how pale that would, how that would pale in comparison to what would happen later.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was like a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we went from Goresk, we did like a road move to Bastion or something. Again, you'd never be able to do that just a year later. It's just helicopters everywhere because of the ID threat. But at the time, it was like, it didn't matter.
Yeah. So are you on Bastion for a little bit, or?
Yeah, Bastion for a little bit, and then we just bounce around. As snipers, we just get detted out to different platoons, different places. And we at this point, we started to hear rumours about shit kicking off in Sangin with A Company, and A Company getting into some proper scraps. A Company and patrols. And so it was like, oh, okay, this is different. This is not the normal run-of-the-mill tour now. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, it started to flare up in other places as well. Musakala, a little bit in Kajaki, but because in Kajaki you were on these hill features, you had a command in view of the area, so it was very hard for them to
fully
even
kick
just
off.
target you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you still got the Chinese rockets on the evening coming in. Yeah, and then from Goresk we went to Nauzan, I think, me and Hugh, as a sniper pair. And that was my first significant contact.
Okay.
Because they were attacking the government compound that the Gurkhas were in.
Right.
So we were sent out there. It was 2 hours. Go out there 2 hours just to bolster the Gurkhas because, they're getting threatened, and then you'll be back. So you only need to pack kit for 2 hours. We were there 2 weeks.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So we were fucking running out of food and water straight away, living in these Russian trenches. And I remember one morning, just me and Hugh having an all-in scoff. Yeah. Because in the Paras, the all-in scoff is a big thing in the Paras. You put everything in and you both have a racing spoon. And you both share the same scoff because you put everything in together. And we were doing that. We were having an all-in. We had noodles and everything on the go. And we were having an argument about whether or not eggs were a dairy product. And it was getting quite heated. And we were really, because me and Hugh were like that. We just argued to the bone about some bone shit, And we were really getting heated. And the platoon commander came over trying to split us up. And we were like, no, we're always like this. And we were just coming to a conclusion when all hell broke loose and the Taliban really opened up with loads of shit, RPGs overhead. Because the RPG, when it gets to like its maximum range, it self-detonates. So they fire them the right distance away and it gives it like a top attack mode sort of thing. So it's not like a flak effect above your head. So they were trying to catch us with that as well. And then it leaves the fins everywhere, which I didn't realise. I thought, it's all this weird aluminium shit and it's the fins that are left over. And they were just opening up with loads of rounds. They couldn't shoot for shit, but their field craft was good because you couldn't find them, They were getting a lot of rounds down, but it's very hard to pick them off because you couldn't see, their field craft skills were pretty good. So I assume they were foreign fighters and maybe not local Taliban. Yeah, and he was my number 2 on that. And they were kind of attacking the compound more than us, so the Gurkhas were getting more of the flak. But yeah, we were just trying to spot opportunity priority targets there.
Okay.
Like a guy with a long barrel weapon, we had some success with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you say Hugh's your number 2?
Hugh's my number 2,
So
but Hugh likes to do everybody else's job as well. So he'd try and spot for me, and then he'd run off and touch base with the platoon commander, and then do something with the rifle section, whatever. And so more often than not, I'm just spotting for myself.
Right.
And when he does spot for me, he gives me some wild ass corrections. Like I'll fire the shot, and I'll look to where the puff of smoke is, all right, and I'll think, well, okay, so maybe And we were given AP rounds in Afghan, so it's very hard to see the dust kick up. And I'm trying to spot, and I think I fell a little bit left, and then he'll go 12 right. I'm like, no. And I say, all right, Hugh, and I just do my own adjustments. So yeah. But that was fun. So that was significant, and we didn't take any casualties, but it's the first time it was like, oh, they're shooting at us. They're suppressing us. So does that mean they're putting in, is a section going to flank us now? Like, are they doing what we do to them? Are they doing it to us? Like, it was weird, the first time on a two-way range. I mean, we were in good cover, though, because we were in an old Russian shallow trench.
Okay.
But, yeah, that was significant. And, yeah, I mean, years later, though, I'd find out that it was the provincial governor's son that was in the compound. And the local population had got the Taliban to go in and fight them because the local governor's son, the governor was Engineer Dowd, if I remember, and his son was a prolific paedophile, and he was taking the local kids, and they were angry with him, and so the Taliban were kind of doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
And I find this out many years later, and it was just one other thing that made me really sort of disenchanted with the whole thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there'd be much more of that to come later on.
Okay.
So that was Nowzad. And then the next thing after that really was Kajaki, because I remember going from Nowzad, going straight on R&R.
Oh, so you popped back to UK?
Yeah.
On leave?
Yeah, and see my missus at the time.
Okay.
Who, did I know that she was pregnant at that stage? Yeah, I think so. I think we knew about the baby and everything, and So it was, I was really like wanting to do the family thing at that stage.
Okay, yeah. And then you come back out, and then you're then on your next task, I suppose. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I got helicoptered out of Nowzad on my R&R, and I remember just as we were coming off, they came under contact and they all scrambled for their positions. And so the whole time I was home, I was thinking about Hugh and thinking about the company and the battalion and what they were doing, and it's hard to not think about anything else, So yeah, then I come back and then I ended up in Kajaki.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were saying before, like, how it was starting to build up in these different locations.
Yeah, in all the different locations. The main ones were Sangin and Musakala. They were the most punchiest at the time. And when you were in Kajaki, you could see the gunfire in the distance in Musakala and the gunfire in the distance in Sangin in both directions.
Right.
You could see the contacts happening, and you could hear them on the net as well, even though they were way out of our radio range because of the way the desert is. I guess we could still pick up what they were saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Kajaki, what do you want to share from that?
Yeah, it was. I felt like they'd forgotten about me because I was out there for so long. It was like 2 months, I think, give or take. I can't quite remember, but it felt like I was out there for a very long time. And and guys came and went, cycled through. We had Gurkhas come up and stayed with us for a bit. They went out, and then some Fusiliers backfilled us in the end. And it was a long old time, but I liked Kajaki because I was always wanting to set up the further OP and spot where they were coming in, because they kept hitting us with Chinese rockets on the evening, but it was very hard to find their positions, and our guns would answer, but we just couldn't seem to get them. And there was one guy that we kept seeing every day. We called him Arnold Schwarzenegger, Arnie, because he just wouldn't. Everything you threw at him, he wouldn't die, and he'd be up in the same position every evening, quite far away, calling in fire and stuff. Yeah.
And you said was this where they were on the mounds?
Yeah, we're on there. It's like two hilltop OPs, basically. We were on the forward OP in Normandy with anti-tanks, and then on rear OP was mortars. And so I'd act as like an MFC on the forward OP, and Mark would be the rear MFC and the rear OP, the Bravo or the Alpha. I don't know which one. I know which is which. Don't quite know how it works, but I knew how to call it mortar fire, and I'd do that more than I would snipe because of the ranges involved. And if they would often be attacking the ANP, that were down off of a hill further along, and they had this big sort of ZSU 23-4 off the back of this technical, and they used to use that, and the Taliban used to try and attack that. So we'd sort of be on the flanks of the Taliban watching their attack, so we'd be able to hit them from the OPs. And so I'd call in mortar fire a few times. But
Okay.
I was very slow. Like I'd start to call in the fire mission, and then Mark would just get straight on the net and just have rounds in the air before I could even,
Okay.
he was just that good at MFC,
Yeah. Was you doing much snipering whilst you're out there? Then?
Did a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Did a little bit. But it was the ranges were so long, it was harassing fire, And because the ranges are so long, I was sort of on full elevation, holding off on my clicks, and almost having them out of my sight picture, so the rounds were like coming in almost vertically because of the danger space of the first catch and the first grades. I think that on paper it was 1,000 meters was your optimal range, but you could harass out to 1,600 meters. But this was like 2,500 meters. I was doing this,
Oh, shit, okay.
yeah. So literally like chipping rounds in and watching them come straight down, and it was so far away that I could fire the round and then build the position back up and be looking through the scope to watch where my rounds landed, because it was that far away.
Yeah.
And so I had some better success as well at 2 kilometers as well. There's 2K house where a sergeant was coming up either side, and managed to get him after. That wasn't like a Tom Berenger first round first kill type scenario. That took me 9 rounds to get on. Do you know what I mean? And it was a case of him coming out one side of the building and me firing a shot, and then he'd disappear. By the time the shot landed, he'd have changed position. So he was quite switched on enough to change position, but he was going either side of the same building. So in the end, I fired the shot knowing that he would appear, and I timed it just right so that he appeared round and then got hit.
Okay.
So,
okay. That was about 2K.
That was 2K, yeah, because it was at 2K house.
Right.
From my sketch map and everything, and my ranges.
Pretty good distance.
Yeah, it was tricky. It was more a question of timing than anything else. Yeah, and then I took the first stag that night, so I could watch him through the Clue, which is the anti-tanks thermal imaging site, and I watched his heat signature go cold and dogs eat him and stuff. So he didn't survive that. But yeah, that was that, and it was, and then we had to get rid of a load of Milan missiles because they were surplus stocks. We were firing them off into the hill. None of them set off a mine, annoyingly.
Okay.
If they could have set off a mine, that would have given us an indication as to what was down there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, is this a good time to share that?
Kind of chronologically, I think we're there now. Yeah. So it was one morning we were looking out towards the south, and up to this point, there'd been a lot of talk over their speakers and stuff, a lot of the rallying chants to get the people rallied up to come and attack us. Because I'd done a basic Pashto course, so I understood basic Pashto, so I could pick out words. And they were trying to get the crowd together to sort of all infidel speak, and I was really concerned that they'd get a big mob of people and come up the hill. Yeah, because then we'd have to start. We couldn't let them get to us because they'd kill us, so we'd have to then start killing civvies to stop them from getting to. You know what I mean? And I really didn't want that scenario, right? And bearing in mind, just before our tour began, there was a French SF group there, and they got killed and they got lynched, and the civvies came out and they cut them up and they dragged their bodies up and down with the vehicle. Did horrible stuff. Did horrible things to them. So that was in the back of my mind as well. That was what the local population would do. And then I always remember thinking of the Rudyard Kipling poem, when you're lying wounded on Afghanistan's plains and the women come out to cut off what remains, roll over to your rifle and blow out your brains, go to your God, a soldier. And I just remember that passage being like, even back in like the first Anglo-Afghan war, they knew the savagery that the locals could inflict, And so I didn't want to be in that situation. That was horrible. And so there were a group of insurgents, and they were running like an illegal vehicle checkpoint with the civvies. And they were just in and amongst the civilians and everything. And so what our normal answer to, and that was on the southern flat facing the south. On the northern flat was where the AMP were, where the Taliban would attack the AMP. And that was where we'd hit them with mortar fire more often than not. Because there's less civilians out there. But on the southern flat, it's all just Kajaki Sofla, so it's all like the village. And so 2 insurgents on an IVCP didn't really want to call in mortar fire, because they were right in amongst buildings and stuff and Civpop. But even though Civpop would have fucking lynched us, I didn't want any of that on my conscience, So the decision was made to just go down and just take 2 shots. Take them both out and then just come back up the hill. Because I was far enough away I could probably hit them, but it would take a few rounds to get on, and I might then hit some, I can't guarantee my accuracy at that range, because I might have hit a building behind or hit anything indiscriminately. So I went down on foot. I took one of the guys with me with a radio, one of the guys was a first aider, one had a rifle, one had a mini-me, because I didn't know what was the blind side of the hill, if we were going to get down the bottom and there'd be Taliban. So I wanted a mini-me there for a bit of firepower. So there's 3 of us going down in sort of tactical bounds. I was going forward with the mini-me, or they were going, I can't remember which the order was, but I was at the front because I was just going to take the shot and then come back up. And it was just like 600 metres down the wadi and then up again on the other side. And we thought it was safe. There was a goat herder going up and down there daily. There was no indication, really. No combat indicators. It was a minefield. Yeah, so I just went to the bottom. And I just jumped over a shallow wadi. Normally jumping across a gap like that, if you were on exercise in Brecon or something like that, you always try and land feet and knees together like a good paratrooper, to cushion the landing because you've got kit on and stuff, so you don't damage your legs. But I got lazy. Luckily, I just jumped over with 1 foot. And then, that was it. I just felt like I'd slipped. A bit of a spring, a bit of a slip, and I felt lose my rifle. So I landed on my ass. Didn't hear an explosion or anything. I just thought, my rifle's gone. My rifle. So I reached back to try and grab my rifle because I could see it was just up behind me. And I was trying to grab the butt of the rifle and my finger was hanging off. And there was blood on the butt of the rifle. And I was like, that's wrong. And then I saw my fingers hanging off. I looked at that. And that's when I looked down and then I saw the mess. And then I just started screaming.
On your leg?
Yeah, it was. I didn't know what exactly, but this leg was off at an angle, the bloody stump. Like, like the cartoons where Elmer Fudd's hunting Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
He gets Bugs Bunny, he's going to take a shot with his shotgun. Bugs Bunny puts his finger in the end, and the end just splays out like that.
Yeah.
That was like that. That was like my leg,
Okay.
basically. And a broken femur, so it was coming up at a weird angle. Because I stood on a cluster of mines. It wasn't just one.
Oh, really?
There was like eddies and swirls where, because the mines migrate every year with each rainy season, these mines had all washed down into the centre of this wadi. And that's the wadi that I hopped over. And so I hopped over like an eddy or a swirl where there was a few mines and they all went off. But luckily, because they're so old and they're crap munitions, they didn't fragment properly. So they're just mostly solid slugs and bits of metal. They wouldn't fragment as well.
Okay.
So, I took a lot of damage to the left leg as well.
Right. But it was your right leg.
It was the right leg that was all flayed and,
Okay. And then you had your team that was with you.
Yeah, pretty much. Jarhead was straight there treating me as a medic. Come straight over across an open minefield, just thinking of my safety, started treating me immediately. Mm-hmm. And put the tourniquet above the break in the femur, which technically on paper you do, but it absolutely killed me. And I was like, no, that's got to go down. So we put it down above where the flayed end was. And that was much better. And it stopped the bleeding as well. Because I held my stump at a certain angle, the blood flow stopped.
Okay. So you were more comfortable
More
with
comfortable that? Then, yeah.
Yeah. And then anything else you can share from that? Because
I don't remember as much about it like the other guys, because they sort of lived through that. And I think that's another reason why I've coped quite well mentally with it, because I was out of the picture pretty quick. I was really concerned with the enemy attacking us there and then, So before I went off, we had another guy with an L96 covering us, one of the Fusiliers, Bombhead his name was, and he gave us sort of covering. He was on Overwatch, if you know what I mean. So we had everything covered. We had enough there. If they did try and roll us up, we had enough firepower. But that was my only concern. And apart from that, it was just waiting for the pain to come. It's the fear of the pain was worse than the pain itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then...
So your adrenaline was pumping and keeping you...
Yeah. Initially, yeah.
Out of pain a little bit.
Yeah, until they, then the morphine sort of kicked in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you get out of that situation? Because obviously...
Well, they took us back. They moved us slightly to a different position. And then on the way back through the marked area, I think it was in the marked area that we'd already cleared, or it might be just out, but Stu Pearson just slipped on a rock and his went as well. So then Stu lost his leg to a mine. So then we got two casualties. Two minefield casualties.
Wow, okay.
And then I think it was after that the Chinook came in, This is like over a long period of time. Like the whole thing from me standing on the mine or me setting off on patrol to us finally getting back out to Bastion. It was all day. It was getting dark by the time we finished. And I set off at 10:30 in the morning, I believe. So
Okay.
it was, it's just a long day. And the Chinook came, and the downdraft on the Chinook either set more mines off or pushed guys onto mines. It's unclear. You know, the official report was very different to what we saw, which made it a little bit controversial. And so Mark then suffered his wounds, upper body wounds, and other guys had shrapnel wounds as well. And then the helicopter couldn't come in, so we called it off because it came down and it hovered above the minefield and lowered the ramp. And then the load master gave the on troops thing, and we were like, nah, fuck it, no way. No way. And none of us could remember the go away sign for the helicopter signals, so we were all doing something different. And well, they were all doing something different. But eventually it went off, and the day dragged on, and I think the next person to stand on a mine was Andy Barlow, the Fusilier.
Okay.
Much later on in the day. And again, that was just a little bit outside of the marked area. I think he shifted his weight to get a water bottle that was thrown to him. It set off another mine. Obviously, this is all in the film, and the film's quite accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a film that's been made about it all. Okay. Okay. We will talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
But yourself with, well, it's not just you anymore, is it? It's a group of you.
It's a bunch of us stuck in the minefield. Yeah.
So how do you all get out of there? Do you?
Eventually, the US came in with winches because the issue was we didn't have a winch fitted to the helicopters. So it was the US para rescue medic guys, the Pedro call signs, I think. Can't remember exactly what they're called, but they came in with the winches and they got straight in, hooked us up and got us out there.
Okay.
And one of them in there was just cutting around in the minefield, like, just clicking everybody on, acting like it's an exercise, and that it doesn't apply to him. And he never set it off. It was really weird. Such a weird day that day.
Yeah.
Things that would, Yeah, so eventually they hooked us up and got us out. And then we transferred over from the Black Hawks, the Black Hawks with winches over to Chinook. And that's where Mike died. I remember seeing him on the back of the Chinook, chest pumping him. And in my confusion, I thought it was Dave Prosser because he was making the most noise. He was screaming the most in the minefield, so I thought he was the one with the most injuries. The old triage thing where the quiet casualty is the one to worry about type thing, But no, it was Mark, and Mark had died. And I didn't fully realise Mark had died until a fair few days after I woke up in hospital. And one of the guys came in and said, "God, it fucking sucks about Mark, doesn't it, mate?" And I was like, "What happened to Mark?" And then I had to relearn it all again. Yeah.
So this is you back in Bastion, or you?
This is me back in Bastion, yeah. And I remember I had to sign for my operation. I had to sign for them to take my leg. Some weird shit. I don't know how it works there, but I remember begging the loadmaster if I could have a fag on the back of the Chinook. He was like, "No, you can't do that." He said, "In fact, you shouldn't be smoking anyway because you're a casualty." I was like, "Yeah, come on, mate. I've been through. Let me have a fucking bine." He was like, "No, you cannot smoke here." And then in the hospital, you cannot smoke. Like, just let me have a fag. No, give me a wheelchair, I'll roll out and have a fag. They just wouldn't. I was gasping for a bine, and they wouldn't let me have one. And anyway, it's in the hospital, and I had to, in a field hospital in Bastion, I had to sign for them to operate on my leg. And I'm right-handed, but my hand's a mess. Like, this finger had been split all the way down where my reg ring was. And that reg ring is the only thing that kept my finger from fully flaying on this side as well. It's basically like when you cook a sausage and you run a knife down it and it all splits open. That was that finger, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I've got this bloody mangled hand with a bandage, and I'm trying to fucking sign my name high off my tits on morphine to try and sign them to then get anything on the paper would do, and that was it, like that. So they put me under to operate. And obviously I was awake for the whole incident in the minefield and everything, and they put me under in hospital, and then I was out for like 5 days while they brought me back to the UK, and then I woke up in Selly Oak.
Okay, you did, yeah.
And then that was when the real nightmare began.
Go on.
It was just horrible. Like
Recovery, you mean?
Yeah, no, just Selly Oak Hospital. Like the hallucinations I had were horrible. It was just, I could go back to Kajaki and relive that 100 times over, but the hospital, because I was having like hallucinations because I was unconscious for so long. When I woke up, I was having nightmares while I was still awake, and it was weird because I was like, I kept thinking everyone was trying to kill me in the hospital, and and in my mind, and I know this ain't true now, but I could swear by this was a reality at the time. Was I had these pipes in my mouth that I couldn't talk, so I was gagged, and I couldn't really move very well. And there was a doctor in green scrubs, and he'd come in, and he'd get close to my ear, and he'd say, "As soon as everyone's gone, I'm gonna fucking slit your throat, you baby killing, all this, say all these horrible things in my ear." And then as soon as he'd go, a doctor in blue scrubs would come, and he'd say, "Oh, all right, Corporal Hale, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do this operation and all this sort of stuff," and talking about it, and I'd be trying to tell him about the other doctor, and I'd be like, and it was like one of those helpless nightmares, and it was like that for days, and it was horrible, and yeah, and it was just like these weird hallucinations, and they were never nice, and it was only until quite a few days until I became sort of fully compos mentis, and I realised. And I got wheeled out of ICU and put into the ward with the other guys. And as I was going through the hospital ward, I was like, all down one side was guys I knew. And I was like, right. And I was led down, and they were wheeling me along, and it'd be another row. And it was all blokes that had been injured. I said, that's a guy who's wounded in Sangin. Oh, there's some guys there. And then there were some other guys I didn't know who were green jackets who got wounded in Iraq. And it was just like a ward full of military, mostly 3-para. Yeah. And that was good. That helped being amongst the blokes. Like if I'd have been there on my own, I'd have struggled.
Yeah. How long was you at Selly Oak?
I can't remember.
No.
Weeks.
It was weeks. Okay.
And then it was the slow process getting Headley Court.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were healing, and then you headed off to rehabilitation to try and.
Yeah, they wanted me to go straight to Headley Court. They're like, "Oh, we got a spot in Headley Court." I got a phone for a call from a nurse, and basically, in between then, I managed to get myself signed out, and then just rocked up on my wife's doorstep, like we were bag full of meds. Like, I'm home. Bearing in mind we'd only been together for like a year at this stage, but we'd already found out she's pregnant and everything. So I was wanting to do the whole family thing. And the last thing she wanted to be heavily pregnant and caring for a wounded soldier. It was a lot on her plate. She carried me through that, honestly, because the battalion did bits that it could, but it wasn't equipped for dealing with casualties. It just wasn't, so it all fell on my wife, and she felt like she had very little support, really.
Okay.
But yeah, I just rocked up on the doorstep, bag full of meds. Right. And that was it. And then I was there, and I got a phone call from the head nurse or whatever saying, "Oh, we've got a spot for you at Headley Court. You can get there for Thursday." And it was like a Monday, and I was like, "No, I'm having 2 weeks off." They're like, "No, you'll have to parade at Headley Court on Thursday." I went, "No, I'm having 2 weeks off." I said, "No, I don't give a shit. What I've been through, I'm having 2 weeks off, whether you like it or not. Afterwards, I'll ring you and we'll arrange a date." And I did. Because they wanted me to go straight there. And I was like, "Nah." But then we started the rehab, and then it was Headley for a few years.
A few years, yeah.
A few years. And towards the end, that's where I met you.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Early legs, wasn't it, or something?
It was, yeah.
Can't remember what year that was.
But at this point, are you still in a wheelchair at home? Like, how are you getting around home before you go to Headley?
Wheelchair at home. I really wanted to be walking when my daughter was born. She was born on Boxing Day, 2006. And I was up on a leg, so I got to a point where I could walk on a leg confidently by that stage.
Okay. But you'd been to Headley Court before
been to Headley Court up to that stage, yeah. So it's all quite quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that from you pushing yourself? Do you think that's why?
Yeah. I tackled it like I do everything in the reg, which you can, because it was always like just smash it, just get your head down, put your head down, and just go for it, and just beast yourself through it, especially if it's physical. Because Headley Court is physical, I thought I could just like smash it out. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And you can, because it's acute stuff. You don't realise how amazing the human body works until you have to do something to counter it, and you have to understand the complexities of how the muscles work together and everything, and how hard it is to train something individually. And it's, I had a lot more better understanding of the physiology of the body and everything after going to Headley Court. I realised you can't just thrash yourself. I mean, there's bits where you just thrash yourself on CV, get beasted in the pool or whatever, but yeah, it was a bit of a learning curve there. You know?
So you started at Headley Court in 2006.
Yeah.
You're then on a leg by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Daughter's born.
Yeah.
And then are you going back to Headley for a bit longer? Or, because you said a few years, but are you going to
like
Battalion?
An outpatient. In between, I'm going back to Battalion.
You are going back to
Battalion.
Battalion.
Gradually increasing the workload. And obviously the thing then was like, I couldn't really do the sniping thing anymore. So then I went to work in the J2 cell eventually.
Okay. So your mindset then is, I need to stay in.
I need to stay in.
I want to be a sniper, I'm guessing.
I knew it wasn't. Thing is, I wanted to get back to ops with the guys, and I really wanted to get back to Battalion. I heard about a bootneck who lost his leg, but he was lower leg. But he lost his leg, and he did the commando course again and all that. And I was like, right, I'm going to do P Company with one leg. And I really didn't need to. Right. And the guys were like, just don't, And so in the end, I set my goal as being like, I want to get back to operations. So the next tour, Free Paras on, I'm going to be there.
What year was that?
I wanted to. That was 2 years later, so 08.
Okay, and that was your goal.
Beginning of 08.
You set yourself that goal to get back out there.
Kinda. I was sort of angling for it, but I didn't know how we were going to get treated. And the CO was really good. He made a charter saying that anyone that was injured on Herrick's guaranteed a job in Free Para. And a lot of other units throughout the years, I noticed, they're injured guys, they all put in one company and they just basically wait to get discharged. They get put in HQ company in one recovery platoon and that'd be it. They'd just be parked to one side. Whereas Free Para were good at integrating us and keeping us with the flow, And so I kept current doing the J2 stuff, and I worked on my fitness so I could pass the basic fitness test to get myself medical deployable, but only in lines of communication. So I managed to get to the point where I could go back. But that started off with a chat from the RSM, John Hardy, Uncle John, because he called me into the office. And I thought I was going to get the old, right, we're going to have to say goodbye to you now. We don't think you're capable. That sort of, I thought I was going to get that chat. But basically he sat me down, he said, right, I want you up behind that rifle, killing those fuckers in no time. And I was like, whoa. Like, if anything, it was pushing me too fast. And he was like, we're going to get you to be the first amputee to go back out there. And we're keen to get you back behind that rifle. Because he knew I was keen as well.
Okay.
And then I was like, well, I was like, right, okay, this is good, but not that quick. Because I don't want to be in a situation where my leg breaks slightly, which is very, very, very likely, or sand gets in, whatever, and then I'm a guy with a broken leg and I'm a liability. Like, I'll be a liability again. And I kept having a vision in my head of what would happen if I stood on a mine with my metal leg. And I was, I don't know, silly, but I just kept thinking, no, I'll redeploy, but I don't want to be like right at the front where I could cause dramas for other people. I don't want to be a liability, you know. So it was agreed in the end that I'd go J2, go the ESL, take a step back, but still be involved in the battalion stuff.
So when you say J2, you say intelligence.
Yeah.
What are you learning there? Because that's an actual role, isn't it?
Yeah,
someone
it's an
can actually do that role. So you're going off to do another course. Have you got to go and do that? Yeah,
it's another course. I'd already done the Ireland one, and this new course was pretty much the same, but like, but based in Afghan sort of thing. And so I went there and did that. And yeah, redeployed. First amputee, I believe, to redeploy. First amputee redeployed at Afghan. I don't know if they have since.
Okay.
But yeah.
So before you went, what's the mindset at home? Because you'd recovered and you got is it a daughter?
My daughter, yeah, my daughter. It was hard to dwell on myself too much because I'm just responsible for this life. I got my son as well, which was my wife's from a previous, but he was my boy, I love him to bits. And it was like, I was a full-on family man whilst trying to recover from this. And my missus having to hold everything together, basically. So, yeah. Strong lady. Very strong lady, yeah. I owe her everything, really. And it all goes on in the background and she doesn't get seen. She doesn't get noticed. Do you know what I mean? But Yeah. Yeah, so that eventually works out and I end up going back to Afghan. And she's made me promise to not do anything stupid. And I kept telling, whenever I phoned her, I was like, yeah, it's all right. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not, nothing's happening and all that lot. And then she saw me on the news in Kandahar. And it was like, you liar. I saw you on the news. Like, you finish it.
What was it on the news?
Some report about I think it was a turbine op going in.
Okay. That one, yeah.
The big turbine op.
Yeah.
And I was on there. She's like, yeah, you're lying.
It was last minute.
Yeah, so I got involved in that. And that was a bit deflating as well, because I like the sort of pains I went through initially in 06 to not inflict any civilian casualties, we kind of flattened Kajaki Sofla. It just got... And we told the civvies to get out, and the Taliban told the civvies to get out. And we told the Taliban, if you interrupt this turbine going in, all hell break loose, we're going to mallet you, And most of them didn't, but there were still areas of contact where buildings just got flattened and guys went in as troops as well. And he said, even though we told the civvies to get out, the guys said they'd go through one of the compounds and there'd be a family huddled in the corner. They'd be like... So then you think, why go out of your way? And even back then, the A&P are just pumping off rounds from this fucking quad anti-aircraft thing into the local village. And I remember in 04, and they were saying they were targeting the Taliban, but they couldn't see what they were firing at. They were just firing it up and over into the distance. And I remember aiming at them on the hill and having a round chambered and taking up the slack on the trigger and thinking, by rights, I should be able to engage them because they're a threat to life. But that would fuck everything up. That would jeopardise our position on the hill. It would probably maybe even have political repercussions. But it's just like the ambiguity and the grey area of morality sort of kicked in there. And then, like I said later on, when we found out about the siege in Nowzad being for the governor's son who was a paedophile and that, you just, I don't know, just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Because when I joined, I just wanted to protect people and be a superhero. Yeah, that was like the childish mentality I had was to protect people and do good things. Bad things to bad people. But yeah, the reality's very nuanced, as I'm sure we all think watching the news these days.
So, how did you find being out there as an amputee?
Oh, it was scary initially. I thought I'd be fine, and I was on a lot of painkillers. Before I left, and I left all my painkillers at home by accident. So I went cold turkey on the flight over, and that's how I managed to get off the morphine and the gabapentin. And so I was in a bit of a bad place when I initially got there, but I gradually got used to it. I had a leg infection out there as well, and I get plagued with leg infections throughout. Up to now, I get them every now and again, and they're horrible. They just knock you out for 6. And I got one of them over there, and I got bedded down in Kandahar.
Is that the end of the stump or?
No, it's not the stump. It's the other leg.
It's the other leg.
Because of all the legacy shrapnel and shit that's still in there.
Oh, it's that leg. Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't quite come out. But you think about all the dirt and the crap that gets smashed into you when the explosion goes off. There's still bits of that in there, and it's just permanently weak. This leg. Okay. Yeah. So.
And so, how long was you out there for that tour?
6 months.
As a full tour. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was a good tour because we didn't lose anyone. There's no casualties, and it was still quite punchy. The guys got to go to different areas and do different things. Although I was stuck in the incel.
I was going to say, how did you find that? How did you find being in the incel?
Don't enjoy it.
Didn't enjoy it, no.
But you're still adding input to the battalion, which is the main thing.
Yeah.
And and getting out on the ground with the turbine op was good because I got back out to Kajaki as well. Got back out and saw my crater.
You did.
There's still little bits of kit lying around. And all the blokes were taking a piss. They're like, you come back to pick up your fucking kit, have you, Jack? Okay, get your fucking kit.
I'll bleep that one out.
Yeah, sorry about that. It slipped out.
What was it like for you seeing that? What was it like seeing that crater?
Oh, it was surreal. Yeah. But I think that helped me mentally recover because I was literally confronted my own what happened, because everything had moved on. Like the hill position had slightly changed. They weren't occupying Normandy anymore. They had running water getting pumped from the dam, and there were new positions dug into the other OP that the Marines had built. So everything had changed slightly, and everything had moved on. So when I got there, I realised that the Kajaki had moved on. I didn't get a sense that Mark was going to be... Like, I thought there was going to be like a stirring moment where I felt like Mark's presence or something, or, you know, but I didn't get any of that, you know. If there is an afterlife and spirits and things, Mark would have been at home in Scotland with his family. You know, there was no essence of that at all. The whole place had moved along. So I was like, okay, and it helped me move along.
So it moved forward.
Yeah, and I could move forward. But
yeah.
I know other guys that were in the minefield that didn't get to go back there again. For them, the minefield is still the minefield, and it is stuck in time almost. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
almost like a freeze frame for them, maybe. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think helped me recover mentally, because I haven't suffered any, you know, touch wood, I haven't suffered with any sort of PTSD or mental problems or anything since that incident, really. I mean, initially I had nightmares straight after and things like that, but I've not suffered with it, you know, and I think that's because partly going back there, but also partly being the first casualty, you know.
Yeah.
The pressure was off me, because I was just all I had to do was survive, whereas they had to deal with the incident, you know.
Yeah.
And even though Mark was a casualty, he still dealt with the incident as well, you know.
So you come back from Afghan.
Yeah.
And what's the mindset now? Because in some ways you've achieved something that no one had done before.
Yeah.
You'd come back. You're back on battalion life, I suppose.
Yeah,
is that right?
back to battalion life. But I always liked the idea of going down to SSG and seeing what was going on down there.
And what's that? Sorry.
They're one para.
One para. That's
yeah.
Special
Forces Support Group. They'd re-rolled fairly recently.
Okay.
And it was still a bit of a experimentation. They still hadn't sort of found their niche, you know. So the other name they gave it was SSG was So Far So Good. Like no one knew like quite where it was going. Is it one para? Is it not one para?
Got it. Yeah.
And so I went down there for quite a while. Working their intelligence cell. So my rationale being is because I'm working directly with SF, the J2 is going to be quite interesting, you know.
Okay.
And in some ways it was. Obviously can't go into much detail about it
No,
here, but like it was interesting, but I was still just in an office job, and the guys in the battalion were doing alley shit, and I was stuck in the office.
And that was you felt like you were missing out probably a little bit.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah. And because they sort of mirror the SF rotation, you don't get to meet people and know people because everyone's off doing stuff. Yeah. So the only guys I knew were ex-3 para guys. Because so when I meet people later on, they say, "Oh, were you 1 para? Yeah. Oh, you must know such and such." Nah, I was stuck in a company office the whole time.
Yeah. And what year is it you moved there?
09.
That was 2009.
2009,
okay.
yeah.
And are you going back to Headley to do extra stuff?
Yeah, occasionally go back to Headley. And then in the end, I just did recovery stuff in Headley, in St. Athens. So we were down in the base. Because it's quite a big base, you know, it's tri-service. Okay. So they had like a little recovery thing there.
Right.
And so I'd attend that. And they just basically thrash you. And then I'd finish that. And while the rest of the people on the course would get their heads down or chill out for the rest of the day, I'd go and work in the office and do that stuff. So yeah, I would just do that basically. And it was like that up until I went to OpTAG.
What year was that?
OpTAG might have been 10. No, it would have been 12. I think, yeah, because there's a big gap when I was in SSG.
Okay.
And then 2012.
2012, you head over to OpTAG,
yeah,
which is short for Operational Training
Advisory Group.
Advisory, there we go.
Yeah, not awareness group. I had that on one of my slides, awareness group.
Oh, okay.
And the RSM was like, fucking get a grip.
And that's helping troops get prepared for what
every time
you
deploy, you get briefed by OpTAG, basically. And they do the J2. And because I was intelligence cell, we do the J2, so we do the ground and enemy threat, basically. Situation-friendly forces as well.
Yeah, okay. And so I don't know when we met at Headley, because we only realised we knew each other from the past this year.
Well, yeah, we met on the cadet
stuff.
Yeah.
But I started in 2009, so my courses, so sometime probably between that period of time.
Yeah, so I would have been in SSG probably.
Yeah. So that's how we met. But what was it like being part of OpTAG? Because it has to happen. You
Yeah.
have to get signed off as you deploy somewhere.
Yeah.
And you are preparing.
And this was going to get me my 3rd stripe as well.
Oh, was it?
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so OpTAG was good. I was scared to death going in for my first brief, but it went well. And then I got my confidence. And then
Why
I
was you
actually-
scared?
Just briefing a room full of people.
How many?
The initial one was about 50, I think.
Okay.
You know, but we go up to hundreds, you know, in this big cinema. So yeah, it would all vary. But first I had to go out and I had to redeploy so that I could be concurrent. So I could be current on the situation over there.
Okay, so
So
what
I-
a short...
So when it's, short, I think it was a couple of months with the Royal Scots in Nad Alley,
Oh, okay.
which was 5 Scots? I don't know. Whichever the Black Watch is in old money. We were out there with them. And so, yeah, that was fun, seeing how much theatre had moved along and how different things were compared to when we were out there in 2006, and it was completely lawless, and, you know, no one knew what was going on, and we didn't have to wear shit tons of body armour and get armoured to the teeth just to go up a road, you know,
Yeah.
which is disadvantages, because the more protected you are, the less situational awareness you have, and the more prone to danger you are, I think. But
So-
whereas in 06, people were assaulting compounds with mags in pockets,
Right.
you know, moving quickly.
Moving quick.
Yeah,
They were light.
because
Yeah,
yeah.
able to move. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like everything's switched round again now, and we're like medieval knights on the Crusades, you know, all lumbered down, heavily laden, you know, in the heat. And it's just, I just didn't like the way it ended up. And of course, their TTPs changed, the Taliban. So,
What's TTP?
tactics, techniques, procedures. The way they operated changed. So it was all like defensive IED seed in, and it was just IEDs, you know, everywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere, a bit of land that you couldn't see, probably have an ID in it.
Yeah.
So that's why they ended up with these balloons everywhere, like a weird sort of surveillance state thing. Yeah, it was crazy towards the end, what it had become.
And so where was you delivering this OpTAG training?
We deliver it, like units would come for training packages in Headley, and that's where we deliver that.
Where's that?
Kent,
Down in Kent.
down
Okay.
sort of Folkestone way.
Yeah.
Like we were based near Folkestone. At Sir John Moore Barracks, and then we'd go to Hive and Lid to then deliver stuff. You know, we used to do the Ireland training there. They got like mock villages where you'd go around and they'd
Nice.
speak through the speakers at you through dummies.
Okay. Nice.
So, you know, you had to sort of do your 5s and 20s and all that shit. And now it had changed slightly, so they just replaced them with Arabic-looking people, and so you've got to do the same, but pretend it's there. And then that got jacked up in the end, and that became. The compounds looked more convincing. And then we took it somewhere else to Thetford, I think, in the end. And we had all singing, all dancing, sangers and everything. Yeah, and that was quite good.
Did you ever come over to Germany?
Yeah, I came over to Germany to brief for a few months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we did OpTAG over there.
Yeah,
So-
probably, yeah. Yeah, I can't remember what year that was. So it must have been like 2013 or something we went to Germany. Because I think it was the last Herrick. Because that was the point I wanted to make. I wanted to make sure that despite being injured, I would still be adding input into the military up until the point of us withdrawing, which was 2014, which I felt was enough time, really. And also the injury started to really take its toll on me.
In what way?
Just little things. Little things. Some days, like I'd get like a sore on my stump and I couldn't put my leg on at all. So then I'm going for pretty fit and healthy. Could probably even do a BFT and all that sort of stuff. To then can't even walk, just like that. You know, depending on what sort of day I'm having. You know, so it became tricky. You know, to sort of justify being anywhere really. And then when it came to move on from OpTAG, I didn't really have another post in, and it was more of a case of there being no valid PIDs for me, you know. And it's just a bit of a struggle, really.
Okay. So at what point are you thinking, I can't be here anymore?
Well,
Was that your
I really
decision?
wanted to hang in there until we finished the Afghan campaign.
Okay.
And that was when the Kajaki film came out and everything. So that had kind of sort of wrapped a bow on it.
Right.
And I left in 2015.
So let's talk about
In
that, the Kajaki movie. You said it wrapped a bow on it. How did that come about? And kind of what was your input to it?
I don't know, but we got contacted and told by the people that produced the film they wanted to do a film on the incident in Kajaki, and my reaction was, "Why? What on earth for? 5 hours in a minefield doing nothing. It's going to be boring." And they said, "Well, no, it sounds like an exciting story, but also we don't want it to be political." And I was like, "Well, that's the worst political one," because there was a lot of scandal at the time around underfunding, under equipment. Our radios didn't work all that well. And we didn't have winches on the helicopters, and that was scandalous, So I thought that's way more political. But what they meant was they didn't want one with an enemy portrayed, because the enemy was a minefield,
Okay.
And they did do a good job of portraying it. They kept it true to us. They write the script, and then they send us copies of the script, see if we're okay with it, and we'd red pen it or whatever and send it back. And some of their ideas they had initially was pretty daft.
Right.
And it's like, I had a pet name for my rifle and stuff, And I was like, get fucking rid of that right now. That's not going in there. And so, we red penned it, and it went back, and it came back and forth, and eventually we were happy with it, and they had one of our guys out there on location as a military advisor, and it all worked out. And I met my actor and that, and on the premiere in Bristol, we got interviewed on the news and things, and it was weird, yeah. My actor's really good guy. His name's Ben Mahoney. And when I first met him in Colchester, we had like a meet up with the actors and stuff and the film crew. And we got to meet, they wanted the film crew to meet us and everything. And basically what what the guys did at Free Para is they ran like a mini sort of P Company training course exercise completely under the radar without the CO knowing and stuff. Because they weren't supporting the film at all. Like, the British Army is shit with media. They're just like, whereas the Americans will embrace it so that they can have some control over it. They'll embrace it, even fund it to a degree if they get control over it. The British are just like, nope, nothing, don't want anything to do with media. No, all press is bad press. And that seemed to be the attitude of Free Para. But under the radar, an old RSM and a couple of seniors and that, they managed to sort of get together and run this whole thing in the local training area without the rest of the battalion knowing. And luckily they did, because they managed to get the actors to bond, and it pays dividends when you watch the film. They do a good job, and they hammered them, and some of the actors couldn't even hack it and left.
Okay.
But the ones that stuck with it did well, and it does come across in the film.
Yeah.
And Ben was a great guy. When I first met him, he kept trying to mirror my stature and everything, and I thought, what's this fucker doing? Is he taking a piss? Do you know what I mean? And then I realised what he was doing, and it was like he was repeating stuff I said back to me and things, and he was kind of like method acting there and then. And I thought, wow, this is how like the professionals do it, And, he was really good. Yeah, he got the same birthday as me as well.
Has he?
Which is really weird.
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool. I mean, I've seen parts of it because, like I said to you before we recorded, I didn't know about that movie. But I wanted to skim watch it essentially before we did this. And it's currently on Amazon Prime. Don't know if that's going to change, but...
it might be under the name Kilo 2 Bravo. Like, they changed the name.
Oh, okay.
Changed the name for an American audience, and sometimes it's known as Kajaki or sometimes Kilo 2 Bravo.
Right. Yeah.
I found marketing, it's better for Americans to say things that they understand, I think.
Fair enough. But all in all, you are happy with the outcome of that movie?
The overall portrayal, yeah. I didn't want us to look stupid in it. That was my main concern.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy that they had me crying in one of the scenes. But they also said that if they did it exactly as we said it happened, exactly how it happened, then we would come across as a little bit emotionless and a little bit machine-like,
Yeah.
Which I guess we kind of were. But also, they do capture some elements of it really well, like the sense of humour and the nervous laughter and stuff.
Yeah.
That happened. I remember in the minefield being in stitches. We were laughing about something. Probably wasn't even that funny, but just any excuse to try and lighten the mood, because it's pretty desperate.
Yeah.
Pretty desperate. And I kind of relaxed when I thought I was going to die, When I sort of accepted it, I thought, we're not getting out of this. And it felt a bit easier. Yeah.
But like you say, that put a bow on it. That
sort of wrapped everything
up. We finished in Afghan 2014.
2014, yeah.
And so is it at that point that you're starting to think?
Starting to look at the next posting and stuff, but It just wasn't that. There was nothing for me. Because I couldn't compete with the other people of my rank and battalion because they'd done Brecon, senior Brecon, junior Brecon, and I've not.
And you're a sergeant at this point?
And I'm a sergeant, but I'm not. I've got no clout, you know.
Okay.
There's no future, really. And it's where the injuries started to pick up a bit more. I became painless. I was getting phantom limb pains and leg infections, and it just got to a point where it's, I'll probably go now. So in 2015, I left.
Okay. I was going to say, did you made that call? Did you sign off as such?
No, I got medically discharged.
Medically discharged?
Because it was getting a bit too hard.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'd have a situation where you're sort of punished for trying to stay in. Because I wanted to stay in, but it just couldn't. It's just too difficult. You know, with the cutbacks and everything as well.
Yeah.
There were a lot less PIDs, a lot less places where they could just tuck you out the way and you could gradually see out your career. You know, so.
Okay. So, mindset, time to leave.
Yeah.
Medical discharge.
Yeah.
What's your mindset when you are thinking of civilian life?
I didn't know what to do, really, because as with a lot of veterans, your identity is wrapped up in your job. That's who you are. And when that's taken away, that's where you get all the panic sets in. And it's like, who am I if I'm not Sergeant Hale? You know, I'm ex-paras. You know, I could always fall on the old, you know, I was in the paras, you know. I could always rely on that to give me inner strength for everything I did. You know, I'm Reg, you know. And then all of a sudden you're not. And it's like, it's a bit of an identity crisis you get initially. And I couldn't think of anything that I wanted to do. And then I remember when I was a kid, I used to like wargaming. And I was quite a bit of a history buff as well. So what I ended up doing was opening up a hobbies and game shop.
Okay.
In Monmouth. So yeah, I ran that for 8 years. And I enjoyed it.
In Wales?
In my own business, yeah.
Okay.
In South Wales,
South Wales. So you set up your own little shop?
Yeah, my own little shop, yeah.
Nice.
And it featured on sex education as well.
Did it?
Season 2, episode 7, I think.
Okay.
There's a quite a long scene shot in my shop. And the whole crew came round and shot it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that was good.
And was that as fulfilling as you thought it would be?
Yes, it was. I enjoyed it because it was my mission statement I wrote at the start was to build a sort of gaming community within Monmouth. Basically give kids another thing to do rather than just, you know, go out and bunk off school and smoke weed and whatever. They could do something else. A little bit nerdy, you know, to get the mick taken out of it a few times by some of the meaner kids, but I enjoyed it. I got to meet the kids and everything, and it was nice. It was a nice environment because you'd see the kids come in when they're really little and they'd sort of keep coming back and then they'd get older, and it was nice. I was part of the human terrain then. I felt like I was part of something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why that area? Why South Wales?
Well, it was because it was in between. It was in Monmouth and it was in between Bristol where I lived and Worcester where my missus lived. So it was kind of...
Okay.
And we wanted to move away from Colchester initially.
Okay. Yeah.
Out of Essex. And so it seemed about right. Yeah.
And how long did you do that for?
8 years.
That was 8 years?
Yeah,
okay.
8 years, yeah.
Did you have staff or was it mainly you doing all the...
Mostly me.
Mostly
me. I got volunteer staff in occasionally because they just really wanted to be there.
Yeah.
But it's hard to entrust. Because even if I did have someone working there, I'd have to be checking up everything all the time because it's your baby, it's your business. So in the end, it was just like I might as well just be there full time.
Okay.
And that's what I did.
Fair enough. So what made you kind of hang that up as such?
It was just COVID was the death knell to it, really.
Right.
Because I got support off the government and stuff, you know, I didn't get hung out to dry. But people didn't come out and shop out more often. They did everything online, which was a trend anyway. But you've still got the kids coming in playing games. Still got the vibrant atmosphere, the gaming clubs, the historical days and things like that. It was still had a really good atmosphere to it, and that just sort of tapered off, and it just ended up as an empty shop, and it sort of grew out of fashion a little bit. And you couldn't compete with online sellers. They just sell stuff from their garage and they wouldn't have to pay any overheads. So they could sell the same things you were selling at a fraction of the price. And it's just, and they don't get taxed, but I do. Like, it's not fair.
Yeah.
So in the end, that's what I do now. I sell the odd thing out of my garage rather than,
Okay.
and stuff that I paint up and sell it on and do commission stuff.
Right. And does that painting up kind of like take your mind off things and just
it's always been therapeutic to me. I started doing it again in Headley Court. Like I couldn't do it in Battalion because they just get yeeted out the fucking window. Do you know what I mean? As soon as anyone got pissed up, they'd be fucking yeeted. So basically, I started doing it again in Headley Court as a OT, occupational therapist thing, you know. And I remembered how much I enjoyed it. It's not so much the detail of painting the pupils of an eye of something, it's the process of the base coat, the shade, the process of churning it out and then getting a finished product and then moving on to the next one. It's something very therapeutic about it.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. And creating your own things. And because I'm a bit of a World War II nerd now as well, I do like units from specific theatres and specific battles and you know.
That's cool.
Not just your standard Normandy 1944 stuff. Like all those weird areas of World War II that most people don't know about. I like to look into that. You know.
That's cool. We've mentioned it a few times, but cadets, how did that come about? Because you're an instructor.
That's kind of where I started, and I couldn't do the thing in Battalion where I'd go back to depot as a full screw and complete the circle, you know. So my chance of doing it in cadets was sort of scratch that itch because that's where I kind of started to begin with. Yeah. So I wouldn't do it initially because I wouldn't be allowed to wear my Reg beret, and that was it. I couldn't. So the Reg. I couldn't risk wearing anything else on my head. It had to be the beret. And eventually, when I moved to Ross, I thought I was just going to have to get over this, bite the bullet, and volunteer my time for cadets. And I did, and I've not regretted it since. I used to get a lot of weird dreams, bad dreams, military dreams. Not really horrific, but panicky dreams, and that all stopped when I started going back to cadets because it kind of scratched that military itch to a degree, even though it's kids and stuff, and you've got to tone everything down. Yeah. It just felt good to train and to teach and to be in that environment again. Yeah, that's cool. And seeing the kids, as you know, seeing the kids learn, and then it clicked for them, and then they get it right, and then they feel proud of themselves, they get that sense of achievement, and it's just, Yeah. And you see them grow in confidence and... Yeah, you know, literally growing up as well. They come in really shy and bashful, and then they get more and more sure of themselves, and they do well. And that's it. You're like, that's my boy. Well done. And it's really cool when you have them come up to you, the older ones. And they're like, Sarge, I just put in the paperwork to go to Harrogate or join up or whatever, and it's really cool to see. And not even just joining the army either, just whatever they go on to do. No. You just know they're going to succeed because they've got that about them, haven't they? Yeah, they've got that extra confidence. It's really cool. Yeah. So I've not done it for that long, but it's good from what I've seen so far. I suppose my last question is, what about yourself, health wise? How's all that going? Is it? It's okay. I still get the odd leg infection, and I still get phantom limb pains. Every now and again, I'll just get one night where I just can't sleep. Okay. Because it's just constant electric shocks going in, you know. But apart from that, it's generally okay. I'm still quite physical. I'll get out on the hills with the kids when we're doing nav and X beds and things like that. I'll walk the dogs up the hills. I still try to keep myself ticking over. I go to the gym. So yeah, everything's great at the moment. Cool. You know. Good to hear. I'm sort of semi-retired, enjoying my pension and just spending quality time. Yeah. With my family and stuff. Brilliant. Well, Stu, that pretty much brings us up to date. Was there anything that we didn't get to cover that you wanted to from your time in service? No, not really. No, it covered most things. I think so, probably. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Well, it is that time of the show where you can give some advice, okay? So the first bit of advice is for people that are thinking of joining the military. It doesn't have to be the army, but anyone join the military. Any advice you can give to those people? I think it's definitely worth doing it, even just for 3 years or minimum service, just to say you've done it. You know, they'll always look back on it. As in a positive way. You chat to any old person that's done their national service, and even though they might have hated it at the time, they always talk fondly of it. Yeah. And so it's always worth doing, I think. And if they are finding it difficult, or they are in something like the Paras and the Marines or whatever, and it's becoming tough, just remember that something my gran always told me is it's just time and it passes. Mm-hmm. Time always passes and it'll be over before you know it, and that'll be it. Yeah. Just stick with it. Yeah.
That's cool advice, that.
Yeah.
I've not heard that last bit about the time, but it's true.
Yeah, that's what she always told
It's really
me.
cool. It's really
Yeah.
cool. And the next bit of advice would be for veterans. And these could be people potentially about to leave the military and become veterans for the first time, or if they've been out for a while. Any advice for veterans?
Not really. Just I don't know. Just invest in your family before you leave, because they're going to be there for you when you leave.
Yeah, that's a good shout. That's a good shout. Cool, man. Thanks very much. How was it for you? How was it for you coming on the show and sharing all your
Good,
stuff?
yeah. It's amazing
Enjoyed it?
seeing how you set all this up out of nothing. And it's just bang.
Thanks very much.
Studio.
It's like I said to you off air. It's a challenge every time I go to a new place. But yeah, I think
You certainly get variety, don't you?
absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that you have, all the stuff that you've gone through, and especially the incident that you went through. So thanks for sharing that. And lastly, I do say this to, in fact, your time. I want to thank you for your time. We don't have infinite amount of it, and you gave some of that up. So thanks for that. And lastly, thank you for your service.
Thank you for yours.
No worries. Thanks, mate. It's been good. This has been Military Veterans Podcast, out.